All right, so here's how it all started. I'm a single dad, 41 years old, just trying to get by and be a good dad for my daughter, who's 16 now. We've always been pretty close. At least, I thought so. I've been doing what I can to be there for her, setting up movie nights, helping her out with school stuff, just being someone she could rely on. Everything was pretty normal, or as normal as it can be raising a teenager. So one night, my daughter asks if her friend, let's call her C, can stay over. I didn't think much of it. C had been around for about a year, and she and my daughter seemed inseparable. They do all the usual things teenage girls do, like watch movies, order way too much pizza, and talk way too loud into the early hours of the morning. I figured it was just another regular sleepover. They came over and everything seemed fine. We ordered pizza, they picked some movie I didn't know, and they settled in for the night. Around midnight, I went to bed, and I didn't expect to see them until the morning. But a few hours later, I got up to go to the bathroom. My house is small, so it's just a short walk down the hall from my room. I figured I'd go, get back to bed, and that'd be that. Except when I opened the bathroom door to head back to my room, there was C, standing right there in the hall, looking like she was waiting for me. She had this look in her eyes that didn't sit right with me. Too intense, you know? I figured she just needed the bathroom, so I said, "Hey, it's all yours," and tried to step past her. But then, she lunged. I don't know how else to describe it. She just leaned in, out of nowhere, like she was trying to kiss me. My brain kind of froze for a second, like I couldn't even process what was happening. Here's this kid, my daughter's friend, practically throwing herself at me in the middle of the night. I pulled back and laughed it off, trying to keep it light so it wouldn't get awkward. I said something like, "Whoa, hey, I think you've got the wrong guy." She looked a little embarrassed, kind of mumbled something I couldn't catch, and then turned around and went back to my daughter's room. I just stood there for a second, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. But in the end, I brushed it off. I figured she was just a kid doing something impulsive and awkward, and it didn't mean anything. I chalked it up to teenage weirdness and went back to bed, thinking that was the end of it. A few days went by, and I didn't think about it again. Then, out of nowhere, I get a call from the police. They told me they needed me to come in for questioning. Now, at first, I thought maybe there'd been some sort of mistake, like they'd gotten the wrong guy, or maybe it was about something else entirely. But as soon as I got down there, I knew it was bad. The look on the detective's face said it all. He starts telling me that C had accused me of, well, of violating her. I felt like my whole world was spinning. I remember just sitting there staring at him, not even understanding what I was hearing. I kept thinking, this has to be a joke or some misunderstanding. I tried explaining what actually happened, that there was nothing to it, that I'd turned her down. But they just kept looking at me with that same expression, like they were waiting for me to slip up, to admit to something I didn't do. I went over everything again and again. I told them about the hallway, how she'd tried to kiss me, how I'd laughed it off and gone to bed. But they kept pressing, asking for details, questioning every little thing I said like they were looking for holes. I knew I was innocent, but they were treating me like I'd already been convicted. Then they asked me why she'd make something like this up. I didn't have an answer. How was I supposed to know? I didn't know what was going through her head that night, and I couldn't explain why she'd twist something so innocent into something awful. I tried my best to keep calm, but the more they questioned me, the more I started to feel like I was being trapped, like they were building a case against me based on nothing but her word. When they finally let me go, I walked out of there in a complete daze. I felt sick, like my whole life was crumbling, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. The accusation hung over me, and I knew it was going to tear everything apart. When I got home, everything felt different. I was drained, my mind running a mile a minute, and I still couldn't believe this was actually happening. I thought maybe my daughter would see through it. No, it couldn't be true. She knew me, right? But when I tried to reach her, I got nothing, just radio silence. After a day or so, I finally hear from her, but not in the way I expected. She's cut me off, blocked me on social media, the whole 9 yards. And to make it worse, she made this post just this single line that said something like, "Believe women." That was it, nothing more, just that one line. I can't even begin to tell you how much that hurt, because here I am, fighting off these ridiculous accusations, and my own daughter has basically written me off to the world. I didn't give up, though. I texted her, tried calling, tried showing up at her mom's place to see her, but my ex wouldn't let me in. She's standing there, blocking the doorway like I'm some kind of criminal. And even though she wasn't saying much, I could see it in her eyes. She believed it too. It was like a punch to the gut. Here was this woman I used to share my life with, the mother of my child, looking at me like I was some kind of monster. Then my ex's brother. This guy who's always acted like he's got a grudge against me decides to take matters into his own hands. He comes out of nowhere, shoves me back from the door, yelling at me to get lost, calling me names. And when I tried to hold my ground, tried to say I wasn't leaving until I saw my daughter, he clocked me right in the face. One good punch, and I was on the ground, and all I could hear was him shouting at me to stay away. So now I'm sitting there outside my ex's place, bleeding and humiliated. I'm thinking, how did things get this messed up? It's like the whole world flipped in an instant. Just days before, I was this regular dad who'd do anything for his kid. Now, I'm the guy nobody trusts, the one everyone thinks is a predator. At that point, I didn't know what to do. My daughter was gone, her mom wanted nothing to do with me, and even my own friends started acting weird around me. It's like this accusation just stuck to me, no matter how false it was. And the worst part was not having my daughter. That was what cut the deepest. She didn't want to see me, talk to me, hear me out. Nothing. And that's when it hit me. To her, I wasn't her dad anymore. I was just this person she wanted no part of. The days dragged on, and the police kept at it, calling me in again and again, asking the same questions like they were waiting for me to slip up. Every single time I told them the truth, but every single time I walked out of there feeling like I'd lost a piece of myself. And every time I came back to an empty house, knowing that my daughter thought of me as some kind of monster, it was killing me. I barely slept. When I did, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, thinking about all the things people might be saying behind my back, wondering if my daughter was going to spread this around, how I'd ever live this down. I'd never felt so alone in my life. Every part of me wanted to go to her, make her understand. I kept telling myself that if I could just talk to her, maybe I could get her to see reason. But every time I tried, I'd remember that look on her face when she blocked me. That look of total disgust, like I wasn't the man who raised her anymore. It was like I was invisible to her now, just erased from her life in a single move. All I could do was wait and hope that somehow, some way, the truth would come out. But sitting there alone, with everyone around me turned against me, it felt like that truth would never see the light of day. So getting called in for questioning once was rough enough, but it didn't stop there. It felt like every time I thought I'd explained myself clearly, they'd call me back in with more questions. I honestly started to feel like a criminal walking into that station every time. I'd sit down, trying to stay calm, but I could see the way the officers were looking at me, like they were just waiting for me to slip up. They'd ask things over and over, changing the wording, throwing in questions about things that had nothing to do with the actual accusation. It felt like they were just testing to see if I'd crack. The worst part was that they'd keep asking these ridiculous details, like, what were you doing on this night? Why did you let her stay over? Stuff that made me feel like they were more interested in finding something to use against me than actually listening to what I was saying. I kept thinking, how many ways can I tell you that nothing happened? I'll never forget the first time they made me sit there and give a statement. They handed me a piece of paper and told me to write down everything I could remember about that night. I'm sitting there in this tiny room, pen in hand, trying to figure out what exactly they want from me. And I mean, how do you remember every detail of a random night that seemed perfectly normal at the time? There was no reason for me to memorize every little thing because, to me, nothing even happened. I wrote what I could, told them exactly what I'd told them verbally 100 times, that I'd gotten up, gone to the bathroom, and then ran into C in the hallway. She tried to kiss me. I turned her down, and that was it. I thought it was no big deal, honestly. Just a weird moment I shrugged off, like, teenagers are awkward sometimes. But the cops? They didn't see it that way. I could see the way they exchanged looks, like they didn't believe me, and it got under my skin. Then came the harder questions. They started getting personal, asking me why I wasn't married anymore, why my daughter was even staying over at my place instead of her mom's. All these questions, like they were trying to dig up some hidden dirt on me. I couldn't help but feel like they had already made up their minds about me, that they'd decided I was guilty, and they were just waiting for me to mess up. At one point, they pulled out my daughter's statement. I didn't get to see it directly, but the way they talked about it, it broke me a little. They kept saying how she believed her friend, how she thought her friend would never make something like this up. And all I could think about was how quick she was to side against me, her own dad, without even talking to me first. It's like they were twisting the knife, reminding me that my own daughter saw me as the villain here. They even brought up my ex. They said, "Your ex-wife seemed pretty convinced about this too," like that somehow added more weight to the accusation. I get that divorces aren't always pretty, but we'd been decent co-parents. At least I thought so. But now it was like everyone around me was just ready to believe the worst. Each time I left that station, I was more drained than before. I'd walk out into the daylight feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was spinning with all these questions I couldn't answer, like how I'd even ended up here in the first place. And every time I got a call from them to come back, my stomach would drop. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe they'd already decided to pin this on me, and nothing I said was going to change their minds. And while all this was happening, I didn't have my daughter. My own kid, the one person I thought would have my back, was completely gone from my life. I'd check my phone every day, hoping maybe she'd reached out, or even just sent a message saying she wasn't sure what to believe. But there was nothing. She was totally silent. And knowing that she'd rather believe her friend than her own father, that stung more than anything the cops could throw at me. One day they called me in and started showing me pictures. It was like they were trying to psych me out or something. They'd hold up photos, ask me to describe things that had no relevance, like the layout of my house, where people were sitting during dinner, what we talked about that night, stuff that felt completely random, but they'd watch me closely, like they were analyzing every word, waiting for me to stumble. It was a total mind game. I knew that nothing happened, that I'd done nothing wrong, but with the way they questioned me, I started second-guessing myself. I'd catch myself thinking, did I somehow mess up? Did I say something that sounded off? That's the thing about these situations. They mess with your head, make you doubt yourself, even when you know you're telling the truth. But I didn't back down. I gave them the same answers, over and over, even though I was exhausted. It felt like I was living in a nightmare where I couldn't wake up, couldn't shake this accusation that had come out of nowhere to rip my life apart. And I'd go home, alone, every night, replaying every word I'd said, every look the cops gave me, every sigh and side-eye that made me feel like I was guilty just for being there. And then there was the waiting. I'd leave the station and have days where I'd just be waiting, wondering if they'd call me back in, if they'd decided to arrest me, if they were talking to my daughter again, feeding her more reasons to stay away. It felt like I was on trial every single day, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. And all this time, there was this pit in my stomach, because I knew that if I couldn't convince them of my innocence, I'd lose everything. My daughter, my family, my whole life. Looking back, I still don't know how I got through it. I'd sit at home, staring at the wall, wondering how a single accusation could ruin everything. My world had flipped so fast, I barely had time to process it. And knowing that everyone around me was so quick to judge, so eager to believe the worst, it was a kind of pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. So yeah, that's where I was, constantly walking into that police station, facing people who didn't believe me, and then coming home to an empty house, wondering if this nightmare was ever going to end. So, after all those rounds with the police, feeling like I'm constantly trying to prove my innocence, the next blow didn't come from them. Nope, this one came straight from my own daughter, through her social media. I didn't see it right away, but I sure as hell heard about it. People started messaging me, friends calling me up, and I knew something was off before I even checked. When I finally saw it, my heart just sank. There it was, right at the top of her page. Believe women. Just those two words, posted like some sort of badge, a little nod to everyone following her that I was guilty without even saying my name. And for some people, that was all they needed to see. There's something about seeing your own kid say something like that for the world to see. Even if she didn't spell it out, everyone in our circle knew what she meant. Family, friends, acquaintances, they all knew I was the one being accused. And seeing my daughter put it out there felt like the final nail in the coffin. To her, I was guilty. End of story. I'll be honest, I stared at that post for way too long. Like maybe if I looked hard enough, it'd make sense or change somehow. It felt like betrayal in its purest form, but even more than that, it made me feel so small, so powerless. I couldn't reach her, couldn't get her to listen. And now she'd told everyone else what she thought too. There was no going back from that. Within hours, my phone started blowing up. Family members messaging me, asking what was going on, if it was true. People I hadn't talked to in years were suddenly interested in my life, like they were watching a train wreck. Some tried to keep it subtle, but it was clear. They all assumed I'd done it. Friends, neighbors, people from work. Everyone knew someone who'd seen it, and it was like I had this giant scarlet letter pinned to my name. And it's not like I could even defend myself. Anything I said would probably just look like a guilty person trying to cover their tracks. Plus, with everything still being investigated, the police told me I was better off staying quiet. So here I am, watching my life get ripped apart online, and I can't say a damn thing. Then came the messages, some from complete strangers. People accusing me, calling me all kinds of disgusting names, telling me what a monster I was. I got death threats, People saying I should rot in jail, that I was everything wrong with the world. They were sending me paragraphs of pure hate, and I had to sit there, powerless to defend myself. My daughter, meanwhile, was still silent. Nothing from her directly, no calls, no texts, just that post for everyone to see. And every time I checked her page, it was still there, with people flooding her comments with support. "You're so brave," they said. "You're doing the right thing." Nobody stopped to think for a second that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't guilty, that I might actually be the one telling the truth. The people I thought were friends disappeared. A few reached out, probably just to satisfy their curiosity, but it was clear they didn't believe me either. One of my closest friends, someone I'd known for years, didn't even bother to call. He just sent a single message that said, "Hope it's not true, man." Hope it's not true? That's all he had to say? It felt like everyone I'd ever trusted had vanished or turned against me in a matter of days. And my daughter's post stayed up. I kept hoping she'd take it down, that maybe she'd have second thoughts, that someone would talk sense into her. But it just stayed there, like a billboard reminding everyone who followed her that I was supposed to be a monster. One day, I actually considered posting something myself. I typed out this long, angry message defending myself, saying how much it hurt to be judged without any proof. But every time I looked at it, I thought about how it had looked to everyone else. They'd see it as damage control, or an angry man trying to intimidate his daughter. No one would listen to a word I said. They'd twist it, make it seem like I was trying to guilt trip her or pressure her into silence. So I deleted it, and I just sat there, feeling completely helpless. In the days that followed, I couldn't go anywhere without feeling the weight of that post. I'd run into people who knew about it, and they'd avoid eye contact or just stare, clearly wondering if they were looking at a criminal. People at work started acting weird around me too, like they didn't know what to say. And to top it all off, a couple of my neighbors started avoiding me. I'd wave, and they'd pretend they didn't see me, just hurrying back into their homes like I had some kind of disease. I'd check her profile every day, hoping maybe she'd taken it down, but she didn't. And the longer it stayed, the more people joined in. It became this rallying point, people applauding her bravery for speaking up or saying she was taking a stand. I wanted to scream, to tell them that she hadn't spoken to me, hadn't even tried to hear my side. But I knew that'd just make things worse. It's like the more I stayed silent, the guiltier I looked. But saying anything would make it worse. So I was just stuck, unable to do anything except watch my reputation go up in flames. My own daughter had painted me as a predator, and the rest of the world was eating it up like some kind of twisted drama. And what was I supposed to do? Some nights I'd lay awake, thinking about what I could say to her, how I could explain how much this was destroying me. But then I'd remember she wasn't answering, that even if I got a hold of her, she probably wouldn't listen. In her mind, she'd already decided who I was. And the worst part? Everyone else had too. I used to think social media was just a place to catch up with people, share photos, and maybe laugh at some stupid memes. I never thought it would be the thing that ripped my life apart, and now here I was, watching as my own daughter's post dragged my name through the mud, while people cheered her on, oblivious to what the truth actually was. I was officially alone, and no one cared. After weeks of living in a nightmare, answering the same questions over and over, the day finally came when I got another call from the detective. This time, though, he didn't sound like he was ready to go another round with me. There was something different in his voice, something almost, I don't know, cautious. He told me to come down to the station because they had an update on the case. At this point, I didn't know what to expect anymore. I figured it was just more of the same, more questions, more accusations, more waiting around while they picked apart my story like I'd done something wrong. But I went in, sat down, and waited. The detective looked at me for a moment, then leaned forward, almost like he was preparing me for what he was about to say. He cleared his throat and said, "We've been re-interviewing C. She's changed her story." Those words hit me like a brick. My first thought was that it was about to get worse, that somehow she'd found a way to dig the hole even deeper. But then he went on. He explained that they'd been pushing her for more details, something solid to back up her accusation, and apparently, things didn't add up. They'd started noticing inconsistencies, things that she'd left out before, details she couldn't keep straight. And when they pressed her on it, she began to stumble, backtracking on certain parts of her story. He said she'd gotten flustered, couldn't keep the timeline straight, couldn't remember what she'd already told them. At first, they thought it was just nerves, but the more they pushed, the shakier she got. Then he said they noticed something. Her entire story was starting to fall apart. They kept asking her to clarify, to give them one clear, consistent version of events. Every time she tried, she'd mess up, say something different than she had before. Eventually, she froze up, went silent, and that's when they really leaned into her. The detective said they pressured her, reminded her of the seriousness of what she was saying, how important it was to tell the truth. And that's when she cracked. According to the detective, C broke down in tears and admitted that none of it was true, that I hadn't done a thing to her. She confessed that the real reason she'd accused me was because of her mom's boyfriend. He was the one who'd hurt her, but she couldn't bring herself to accuse him directly. She was scared of him, felt trapped, and didn't know what else to do. She said that pointing the finger at me had seemed easier, safer somehow, since I wasn't really part of her life. When I heard those words, I didn't feel the relief I'd been waiting for. I felt a wave of anger, frustration, and hurt that I couldn't even describe. All this pain, all the sleepless nights, the way my own daughter had turned against me, it was all because I was the safe option to blame. C had completely turned my life upside down because she didn't want to face the real monster in her life. The detective went on, explaining that they were officially clearing my name and closing the case. Legally, I was off the hook. I wouldn't be arrested, wouldn't have to worry about charges hanging over my head. But as he spoke, it all felt so hollow. Sure, I was cleared in the eyes of the law, but what about everything else? My reputation, my relationships, the trust my own daughter had shattered, all of that was still in ruins. The detective could tell me I was free as much as he wanted, but it didn't change the fact that everything I cared about had already been ripped apart. I barely remember leaving the station. I must have driven home in a fog, replaying the detective's words in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. When I got home, I just sat on the couch, staring at the wall, feeling completely numb. The truth had finally come out, but it didn't fix a damn thing. I kept thinking about how easily C had turned me into her scapegoat, how quick she'd been to ruin my life because it was easier for her. And the worst part? She'd done it without a second thought, without any care for the destruction she was leaving behind. I thought about my daughter, how fast she'd believed the lie, how quickly she'd shut me out and posted about believing women, as if I was guilty without a doubt. For days after, I couldn't shake this feeling of emptiness. Sure, the accusation was gone, but the damage was done. Friends, family, everyone who'd once been in my corner had treated me like I was a monster. I'd been forced into this horrible isolation, and now they expected me to just pick up and carry on like none of it had happened. And then, of course, the calls started coming in. Mostly from family and people who suddenly wanted to talk after ignoring me for weeks. But I just wasn't in the mood. I couldn't shake the anger, the emptiness. The one message that really got to me was from my daughter, though. She left me a long voicemail. The second I saw it, I just stared at my phone, not sure if I wanted to listen to it. Part of me wanted to delete it right then. I mean, she'd already said everything she needed to say when she posted that believe women thing. I felt like, at that point, her loyalty was clear. But another part of me, the dad part, wanted to give her a chance. I guess there was still a part of me that hoped she had some explanation that would make this whole thing make sense. I hit play, and her voice came through, shaky and hesitant. She started off with, "Dad, I'm sorry." Right away, I felt that stab of hurt all over again. Sorry? She was sorry? That was supposed to cover the weeks of hell I went through? But I kept listening, even though every word felt like salt in a wound. She talked about how C was her best friend, how close they were, and how she felt like she had to believe her. She said something like, "I didn't think someone would lie about something like that, especially someone I trusted so much." Her voice was cracking, and I could hear that she was crying by the end of it. She was saying all these things about how she missed me, how she'd been scared and confused, and how now she felt guilty. I wish I could say it made me feel better. I wish I could say hearing her apologize took away all the pain and anger I'd been carrying around. But it didn't. All I could think about was how fast she'd been to throw me under the bus. There was no hesitation, no, "Dad, can we talk?" Nothing. She'd heard one accusation and went straight to condemning me, making me out to be the monster in the story. Her voicemail ended with her saying she wanted to come over and talk face to face. She said she needed to see me, to make things right. She kept saying how sorry she was, like repeating it would fix everything. But all it did was make me feel even emptier. Hearing her voice, knowing she was hurting now, didn't bring me any satisfaction. It didn't undo the fact that she'd already decided I was guilty before anyone even got a chance to investigate. That evening, I sat on the couch, phone in my hand, just staring at her name in my contacts. I kept asking myself if I should give her a chance, let her come over and try to explain herself in person. But every time I thought about it, I felt this wall go up. I couldn't shake the betrayal. My own kid had judged me without hesitation, and now, after it was all over, she wanted to talk? Around 8 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I didn't even have to check. I knew it was her. She'd been texting all day, saying she was on her way and asking if I'd please let her in. But when I heard her voice pleading on the other side of the door, I couldn't bring myself to answer. I just sat there, feeling this mix of anger and sadness. She stayed outside for a while, knocking, calling my name. I could hear her through the door saying, "Dad, please, I need to talk to you." But I couldn't do it. Every part of me wanted to open the door, to just hug her, forgive her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I'd remember all those nights I spent alone, knowing she'd chosen to believe the worst of me. It was like I was stuck between being her dad and being a stranger she'd hurt, and I didn't know which one I was supposed to be. After a while, she left, and I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But the messages kept coming. She'd text me long apologies, saying she couldn't believe what she'd done, how sorry she was, how she needed to make things right. And I wanted to believe her, to believe that she was truly sorry. But how was I supposed to just erase everything? It wasn't just a mistake. It was a decision she'd made over and over again for weeks. She'd ignored me, blocked me, even posted publicly that she believed in her friend's accusation without a second thought. And now she wanted a clean slate? I couldn't wrap my head around how she could even ask for that, let alone expect it. At one point, she sent a message saying, "Dad, please don't hate me." And that hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth is, I don't hate her. I never could. She's my kid. And even though she ripped my heart out, I still love her. That's what made it hurt so much in the first place. If she were just some random person, it would have been easier to shake off. But she was my daughter. The one person in the world I thought would have my back no matter what. I spent a lot of nights thinking about whether I should forgive her, whether I could let her back into my life without feeling this constant sting of betrayal. But every time I thought about it, I'd remember the look in her eyes when she blocked me, the coldness in her voice when she said she didn't want to talk. Those memories were burned into my mind, and no amount of apologies seemed to make them go away. So I just stayed silent. I couldn't bring myself to answer her texts, to pick up the phone when she called. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to have that conversation, to let her back in. I needed time, space to process everything, without feeling like I had to forgive her right away. And I know that might make me sound like the bad guy, like I'm being too harsh. But after everything I'd been through, I felt like I deserved a moment to breathe, to put myself back together without rushing into a forgiveness I wasn't ready for. She'd already moved on, already felt like she'd done her part by apologizing. But for me, the damage was still fresh. In the end, I sent her a short message. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't see her right now, and that I'd reach out when I was ready. It wasn't the answer she wanted, and I knew it probably hurt her, but it was the truth. I wasn't ready to open that door again, not yet. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. So after I told my daughter I needed some space, I thought things would calm down, at least for a little while. I figured I'd get some time to process, get my head straight without constantly thinking about the betrayal. But that peace lasted all of about a day before the texts, calls, and messages started coming in again, this time from the family. It started with my mom. She's never been one to stay quiet, especially when it comes to family stuff. She called me, saying she'd heard about everything and was worried sick about me. I get it, I really do. But as soon as I picked up, it was clear she wasn't calling to check on me as much as she was calling to talk me into forgiving my daughter. She went on and on, saying things like, "You know how teenagers are? And she's young, she made a mistake." I tried to explain to her that this wasn't some small slip-up, that my daughter had destroyed my reputation, dragged me through the mud, and left me to pick up the pieces. But my mom wasn't having it. She kept pushing, saying, "But she's your daughter." Like that alone should be enough to erase everything. In her mind, family forgives family no matter what. Then my sister jumped in. She's a little younger than me, and we've always been close, but she took my daughter's side, too. I mean, she didn't say it directly, but her texts made it pretty obvious. She'd send me these long messages about how hard this must be for my daughter, how guilty she feels, how I need to be the bigger person. Bigger person? She was the one who threw me under the bus. But no matter how many times I tried to explain, my sister kept coming back with the same thing. She's young. She was scared. I wanted to scream. Everyone acted like I was the one overreacting, like I was supposed to just shove all my hurt and anger aside because she's my kid. My sister even had the nerve to say, "If you don't forgive her, you're going to lose her for good." Lose her? She was the one who left me, blocked me, publicly posted about me being guilty before I'd even had a chance to defend myself. But now that she's feeling guilty, I'm just supposed to let her back in without question? My mom called again the next day, and this time she tried another approach. She went on about how family's all we have, and how this is a teachable moment for my daughter. A teachable moment? I'm still trying to get back to feeling normal, still living with the emotional scars from all this, and she's acting like it's some kind of life lesson for my kid. It was like everyone saw this as a learning opportunity for her and a minor inconvenience for me. And then there was my ex-wife. I hadn't heard from her much directly since all this started, which was honestly fine with me, but suddenly she was blowing up my phone too. She left a voicemail saying we needed to sit down as a family and work this out. Yeah, like it's that easy. The whole reason I was in this mess was because she too chose to believe the accusations without question. She didn't let me in the house, didn't listen to a word I said, and now she thinks we can just have a family meeting to work things out. I'll admit, hearing everyone gang up on me like that made me feel like I was losing my mind. I was still carrying all this hurt, all this anger, and every single person around me was acting like I was the one dragging things out, like I was supposed to just move on. They kept telling me things like, she's only a kid, and she didn't know any better. But that wasn't an excuse to me. She knew well enough to go on social media and accuse me without a second thought. She knew well enough to cut me off, block me, shut me out. She knew what she was doing then, but now that it's over, everyone's pretending she's innocent. My aunt even got involved. I think she means well, but she's always been one of those peace at any cost types. She sent me this long email saying how important it is to heal as a family and how I should set an example of forgiveness. Honestly, reading that email made me feel sick. She went on about how forgiveness is strength and all this stuff that sounded more like a Hallmark card than actual advice. None of them wanted to understand what I'd gone through. They just wanted me to forgive and forget to make it easier for everyone else. After a week of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I messaged my mom and sister in our family group chat and told them I needed space. I said, I understand you're worried about my daughter, but you need to understand that I'm hurt too. I can't just let this go overnight. I thought maybe they'd respect that. Maybe they'd back off and give me the time I needed to figure out my own feelings. But nope. My mom just doubled down saying how holding on to grudges was only going to hurt me in the long run. She kept going on about how I needed to be a good role model, and all that did was make me feel worse. I wasn't holding a grudge. I was just trying to heal, trying to deal with everything that had happened. But they made it sound like I was being stubborn or petty. Then my sister jumped in, saying I needed to think of the long term and how I might regret pushing my daughter away. It was like they'd all rehearsed the same script, telling me over and over how I'd lose her if I didn't forgive her now, immediately. No one stopped to think about what I'd already lost, what she'd put me through, what it felt like to be completely alone in this. I ended up muting the group chat for a few days, just to get some peace. But even then, they found ways to get through to me. My mom came by the house one evening, just showed up at my door like she was dropping by for a casual visit. She sat me down and gave me this whole speech about letting go of the anger. She even said, "You'll feel so much better when you forgive her." And maybe she's right. Maybe forgiveness would feel good someday, but not now. Not when everything still feels so raw. My aunt called that same night, saying how everyone was worried about me. I felt like a broken record, telling her over and over that I just needed space, but she kept pushing, saying, "Don't let this tear the family apart." Tear the family apart? The family had already fallen apart the second they all believed I was guilty. That damage was done, and it wasn't my responsibility to patch it up just because they were feeling guilty now. By the end of the week, I was just tired. Tired of explaining myself, tired of justifying my feelings, tired of everyone making it about how I needed to be the bigger person. I kept thinking about how none of them had even given me a chance when the accusations first came out. They'd all assumed the worst, just like my daughter did. But now, they wanted me to be the one to fix things, to make it easier for them. In the end, I decided to keep my boundaries. I told them I wasn't ready, that I didn't know when I would be, and that they needed to respect that. And honestly, it was hard. It was hard to push back against my own family, against people I'd always trusted. But I knew that if I caved now, if I forgave before I was ready, I'd just be carrying even more hurt. Maybe someday I'll feel differently. Maybe someday I'll be able to open that door again. But for now, I just need some time. And if they can't understand that, then maybe they never really understood me at all. Last update. After everything, I realized I couldn't stay here. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I'd been through. The judgment, the betrayal, the family and friends who'd turned on me without a second thought. I decided the only way to truly move forward was to leave it all behind. So I made the decision to sell my house, pack up, and move somewhere far away. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I know I need a fresh start. A clean slate where I can finally breathe again. As hard as it was, I cut off my daughter, my family, everyone who turned on me. This whole nightmare showed me just how little they thought of me, how easily they believed the worst with barely a question. For weeks I waited, hoping they'd reach out, that someone would stand by me, but they didn't. And now that the truth is out, they suddenly want to make amends, like a few apologies could erase the pain I went through. But I can't pretend this never happened. I can't just pick up the pieces like nothing's changed. Maybe in this new place I'll have a chance to build something better. Maybe I'll even find people who will actually stand by me. People I can trust to see me for who I am, not who they fear I might be. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I can't spend it surrounded by people who saw me as disposable. I'm done with people who abandoned me when I needed them most. So yeah, that's it. A new beginning, far from anyone who let me down. It's scary, but I'm ready to find a place where I can finally feel at peace again.